After the absurd success of the Wii, Nintendo sought to innovate on home consoles yet again, and at E3 2011 they would show what they cooked up during those years, which was a home console with a tablet-like controller called the Wii U. You can't blame them for wanting to capitalize on the name of their most successful home console at the time, but as we all know, it led to one of the worst times in Nintendo's history because it was just a confusing system to people. The console itself looked very similar to the Wii and launched with New Super Mario Bros. U that aesthetically looked the same as the Wii game, which led to people thinking it was an add-on for the Wii, and the rest is history. However, the Wii U was home to many amazing games that unfortunately couldn't garner much of an audience, like Xenoblade Chronicles X, or rather just known as X when it was announced in E3 2013 with a teaser trailer that was simply cinema. At the following E3, we'd get the official name of the game and much space, much aliens, and much robots. The real meaty stuff, however, would come in an interview after E3, which gave an idea of just how ambitious this project would be. As Shinya Takahashi said, the vehicles are called dolls. They are 5 times larger than a person, so to get the same feel as Xenoblade Chronicles, the map would need to be 5 times bigger. The game world in X is in fact even bigger than that. The trailer itself showed a very short glimpse of the world, so you kinda just had to take his word for it. Well, at least until January 2015, where in the Nintendo Direct we'd get to see exploration of the world of Mirror and just how truly insane the scale and scope they were trying to achieve is, and that's before they dropped the nuclear bomb of being able to ride and fly in mechs. Dude, if I saw this trailer when it aired, I genuinely think my mind would have exploded because I was in quite the gaming bubble at that point and mostly played Zelda and Pokemon. Xenoblade X would then launch in Japan on April 29th, leaving the rest of us to just wallow and cry while we just had to watch other people enjoy the game. Oh. What's that? A new trailer at E3 2015 with a release date for North America? We're so back. Before and around E3, a few interviews came out, including an Iwata Asks, which gave some more insight into Xenoblade X. In the middle of development, they made a pivot to include online play, so they had to include a character creator, which changed the entire flow of the story. Yokota also talked about how much thought went into putting X in the title because for us Westerners it means an unknown factor, whereas in Japan, quote, we refer to the X as cross, as in a place that can serve as a crossroad where people can come across one another unexpectedly. The game has an online aspect, so there will be a lot of player interactions, as if they're meeting each other at an intersection or a crossroads. There was also an interview that Tetsuya Takahashi did with Game Informer where he'd answer the question of why the f this Xenoblade but ain't got no 2 in it. And that's because he saw it as a new series but still had Xeno vibes and commented that it's not only loosely connected to Xenoblade but also Xenogears and Xenosaga. Sure buddy, loosely connected. Xenoblade Chronicles X would finally launch in North America in December and would garner a core audience because, I mean, the Wii U itself was a core audience. Alright, that's the last time I talk on the Wii U. The game was insanely ambitious at the time, with the only other game rivaling that level of ambition being The Witcher 3, which also released the same year. I never played X when it came out despite having a Wii U because I didn't learn about Xenoblade until 2016 when I got the 3DS version of the first game. However, I was bad at video games and couldn't beat it despite my many attempts and kinda just forgot about the series as a whole. That was until the Switch era where Nintendo would give new life to most of the Wii U library and Xenoblade would enjoy itself a nice renaissance. Although there's a game that fits in both of those that never saw a re-release of any kind. Takahashi was asked sometime after the launch of Xenoblade 2 if we would ever see a port of X. Personally speaking, I'd love to play the game on Switch, but it would be really difficult to make it. And when asked why it would be such a problem, he said money. It's a massive game, recreating it would be really difficult. But Monolith Soft popped off during the Switch era, so they made enough money to just announce on a random Tuesday in October 2024 a remaster of Xenoblade X. And I was super excited to finally play it, not only because I'm the #1 Xenoblade fan, but also so I could see firsthand the level of ambition the team achieved on the Wii U, plus more as they added an epilogue with a whole new world to explore. So let's go ahead and dive into this unknown world because there is a lot to get through. Welcome to Xenoblade Chronicles X! The year is 2054 and 2 alien races are going to war over Earth, leading to the whole planet going. Luckily, the coalition government knew the war was gonna happen and jump-started Project Exodus, which had all the major cities launch arcs into space to evacuate people and search for new worlds. Unfortunately, a majority of the arcs got absolutely dunked on, leaving only a few left, including the American arc, the White Whale. You can tell it's American because the flag is plastered all over it like a true patriot. They spent 2 years wandering space looking for a new planet until the aliens started pew 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 and they crashed onto the nearest planet, with thankfully the city staying intact. 2 months go by and Elma awakens you from your life pod after customizing your character, which has some new options in this version. She then takes you to the city of New Los Angeles, which is very advanced, having all kinds of cool tech like skills that I'll talk more about later. But more importantly, they have Builders of the Legacy after the destruction of Earth, or Blade for short, which is an organization split into 8 divisions, each focusing on a certain task, but for gameplay reasons, everyone's lazy, so you'll be doing a bit of everything, mainly gathering, taking out hostile indigents, or scanning the unknown world to bring them ever closer to their primary goal of locating the Lifehold core that only holds the DNA and consciousness of 20 million people. And not to mention, New LA is running on borrowed time, and once that percentage runs down, nothing happens! Except for the entire human race going extinct. Unfortunately, you don't get the luxury of minding your own damn business, as the Ganglion, who are one of the alien races that had a hand in destroying Earth, stalked our asses to Mira to stop us from finding the Lifehold because they're scared of humans. The pacing of the story is a bit rough, especially towards the end, since most chapters have a few requirements to do before you can tackle it, which is good. It gets you to engage with some of the other content on offer, but it does take away from the sense of urgency that the story provides, since it's like, we're all gonna die! Yeah, let me just examine some shit. Also, a good portion of the story has the party just standing around as you get mansplained your mission and hear the 50th joke about Tatsu getting turned to food, and it can get a little boring at times, even with the very good voice acting and the most gorgeous music playing in the background, which is funny because it just doesn't fit most of the time. That's not to say the game doesn't have its moments, because it absolutely does, but it's definitely more back heavy with that stuff, so it can feel like a slog at times. Naturally, a large part of the game is exploring the expansive world of Mira. You'll go around putting down sites to help survey life on this unknown planet, along with examining various objects around the world. You're obviously compensated with money, probes, or energy clips for reaching certain milestones, but I'll be honest, the rewards weren't enticing enough for me to go out of my way to examine stuff or kill tyrants for reasons I'll get into a bit later. However, I did go out of my way to place down sites, not for compensation really, I just hate seeing an empty map and wanted to fill it up. My main motive for exploring was honestly just to see more of the world, because this is one of the best looking Switch games. I have a lot of footage of me just finding the perfect place to take screenshots. I do think this is one of the best designed open worlds, as there was constantly large silhouettes of landmarks tantalizing me in the distance, which always reminded me how tremendous the scale is in this game. And exploring Mira never gets old, since there's a plethora of gorgeous sights to see, caves to explore, and secrets to find. And before I got bored of exploring a continent, they'd introduce a whole new one, ranging from Noctilum's lush forest, the vast greenlands of Primordia, Sylvalum's exotic feeling, to the hostile volcanic land of Kaldros. Each one offering some more wildlife and enemies alongside their unique characteristics really brings out the unknown feeling of the planet. There's also plenty of player expression, since you can sprint and jump around like a crackhead until you fall like a Looney Tunes character. Not like this! You can also kinda Skyrim horse your way up a lot of stuff too, and there's also no fall damage, so you can do some crazy dunks. But you won't be straining your character's legs the whole time, as reaching chapter 6 will unlock a side quest that gives you access to skills, which are mechs that can transform, and some were designed by Takayuki of Mobile Gundam fame. Once I got one, it was so over for me, literally because I took it off a cliff and insurance had to cover me. Not like this! But it also made me want to go out of my way to grab stuff because it's way faster and easier to traverse the world. You also get to customize most skills to your liking, just make sure you don't go to page 7 as that resets everything. And there's a plethora of skills to grind for, like one that skates around like Shadow the Hedgehog and is so cool. Oh, you thought they could only turn into cars? You naive fool! Thanks to the definitive edition, we get a new skill called Harassvelg, which can fly like some other skills, but what sets it apart is being able to turn into a jet, which is a f***ing pipe dream, dude. Like, flying around Mira just feels magical, and honestly is a feeling I've missed from RPGs. Ever since they made the jump to 3D, you haven't really been able to take to the skies and see these wonderful worlds in a whole new light. I obviously don't think a game is a stupid pile of shit if it doesn't have flying. Most of the time it doesn't even cross my mind when playing a game, but man, the feeling I got was just great. And seeing as this is a game with both Xeno and Blade in the name, you already know the soundtrack is an absolute must listen. However, this time a new composer is at the helm, that being none other than Hiroyuki Sawano of Attack on Titan and Blue Exorcist fame. And the soundtrack is very good. The track that plays when you see Mira for the first time is a banger, and every other song follows suit and makes adventuring feel even more fun. That's also why I loved flying in a Skell, because I could just bop my head and vibe. This truly is like the ultimate vibe game, and it kinda goes unmatched for me. Well, until I cover a certain game. Of course, Mira has more to do in it than just running around like a crackhead, as there's a ton of side quests which are split up into 3 categories: basic, normal, and affinity missions. Basic missions are summed up perfectly by their name, you just collect items or kill things. Normal missions are what you'd expect from most side quests in open world games, and they're definitely higher quality than most games I've played. Of course there's still a good bit that are hardly any story and then you go kill or collect stuff, however a solid chunk of them are pretty intriguing stories. Some will have you trying to get humans to trust new alien species you bring into NLA, while others leave you wondering how these are called normal missions when you run into scientists who got eggs shoved down their throat and turned into aliens. Occasionally you'll get an actual storyline where it takes multiple missions to reach the climax, like helping Professor B go to the future or helping Mia become a better soldier. Also, your choices can matter sometimes, like this mission where you have to repair a helicopter, and depending on the wire you choose, someone may die, or choosing not to kill baby animals and then later finding Chris dead. And then of course there's ones you finish in a single quest, which obviously can't be as in-depth, but are still great because you can help humans come to terms or even befriend other alien races you bring to NLA. Affinity missions are the 5-course meal of side quests in this game, since they're like, what if all these party members had 3 missions each and every single one of them is voiced? There's also new characters that I didn't even know were new until I looked it up, so I guess that tells you how well they're integrated into the story. And for completing some of them, you'll get arts or even pets! However, to be able to do all the affinity missions, you'll need to get their affinity up. I'm sure you understand how they got their name now. Battling will gradually raise your party's affinity, but where you're gonna see a noticeable difference more quickly is doing side quests and heart-to-hearts, since responding favorably to whoever is in your party will raise their affinity considerably. Ooh, bars! And the affinity missions did a great job of making me like party members I had no real interest in, since they seemed like just normal people with not much going on, like Yelv or Fog. But I grew fond of them because they went from normal people with nothing going on to normal people that are relatable or had interesting stories, although the side quests made me realize one big problem I have with Xenoblade X. The balancing can be pretty bad in a lot of side missions. Every single quest has a recommended level, so naturally once you hit that level you'll do the quest, except a lot of side quests will have your target or goal be surrounded by enemies that are way higher level than suggested, so I ended up having to sneak past a group of like level 50s hoping they won't smell the shit in my pants and come kill me. This next thing to me is a very good problem to have. By the end of the game there were so many side quests opened up that it felt like an endless sea of them, which is only a problem because they're so damn good I wanted to do all of them, and by God did I! Seriously, don't make them good next time. Just kidding. Please do. Since the original game came out after Xenoblade 1, that means scrolling through arts is just as difficult to do while moving, but that's about the only complaint I have about combat, since the gameplay loop is actually pretty addicting. The first thing you can do after getting out of the tutorial is pick one of 4 classes that each play a little differently and are all completely viable, at least judging from the bit I've played of each. And not to worry if you don't like your choice, since you can swap at any time. And once you stick with one for a period of time, you'll notice your class rank go up, which in turn gives you new arts skills and lets you upgrade to a higher level after reaching a certain rank, but it can be annoying later on as upgrading resets all your gear and arts even if it's the same class, so having to scroll through all your weapons to find the one you are using on top of redoing your art layout can be a bit tedious. However, getting to the max level of a class masters it and allows you to use those weapons and arts on a new class so you can mix and match different swords and guns until you find the combo that works for you. Now onto the actual combat, where you'll fight anything from the local wildlife to aliens and robots, which you'll take down using your arts that there are no shortage of. And a fun new mechanic they added in this remaster is quick cooldown. With the press of a button you get to use an art again before the cooldown finishes, and it will take less from the bar depending on how far along it was. This on top of overdrive, which speeds up all art cooldowns and gives various buffs based on the arts you use, allows the combat to be broken over your knee easier than Bane did to Batman. I was hardly trying to break the game, it just takes a basic understanding of the mechanics and you can kinda do it by accident. Like by the end of the game I was melting through these fools like nothing. Even what I did is nothing compared to some clips I've seen. My one big worry was that micromanaging all your party members' classes along with your own would be a bit too cumbersome. Thankfully, only you can swap classes while the others can only use the class they're given, but they can still get to the higher ranks. I did mention that I found the gameplay loop addictive, and the reason why is simple. Most enemies have appendages you can cut off which can give unique parts once they're defeated, and that also takes away a little bit of RNG, since if you need a specific thing you can try cutting off different limbs to see what it drops. However, However, that isn't the case all of the time, so there can still be luck involved. Parts you gather are used to make new armor, weapons, upgrading augments, and making skills. Although enemies can drop gear for your character, it's never going to be top of the line stuff. You only get that from crafting or tyrants, which are special enemies, and the endgame ones give some of the best loot in the game, but are also the most grindy. And you can usually make out a tyrant by their name because it'll be like Benevolent Jimmy the Third. Some tyrants are a little too big for you to handle, but that's where your skill comes into play, as it also has combat prowess, and man, nuking the shit out of little guys just feels great. Though fighting bigger and tougher enemies requires a bit more prep. Firstly, you can deck out most skells with weapons, which there are many of, along with armor that doesn't change the appearance of your skell. Secondly, since this is America, that means skells run on gas, even though this is 29 years in the future. I guess it checks out that Americans were too stupid to figure out a more efficient way of handling that. It is a little harder to break skell combat in my experience, and by a little harder, I mean it probably requires more than a basic understanding of how arts go together, but regardless, still fun. The biggest addition to this definitive edition is Chapter 13, which seeks to tie up some loose ends with Xenoblade X's ending. Immediately a new phenomena hits Mira called dematerialization, which is accompanied by the ghost that Thanos snapped people gone, and our new antagonist Void, who was just born a hater I guess since they want Mira gone. Thankfully we get a new teammate Al, and he's pretty optimistic and loves the world, which is a nice polar opposite to Void. I enjoyed the new story stuff a lot. I can't talk about most of it because it's spoilers for the base game, but they expanded upon some people's backstory and add some new neat stuff into the story that I'm sure is controversial. Also, for whatever reason, the voice acting in Chapter 13 took a nosedive. I'm assuming the voice direction just wasn't that great because Alma's voice is a lot flatter and quieter for a majority of it, and by the end she sounds like her normal self. But man, the whiplash immediately going from Chapter 12 to 13 is crazy. On top of the additional story stuff is a new region called Volataris, which looks very pretty and is fairly small. Man, where have I heard that before? There's also new music for exploration and combat, which was refreshing after 60 hours of hearing the same combat music. Unfortunately, that's where the positives end for me, as it gets pretty repetitive just going around from spear to weaken the final boss. They do try to change it up by having some be locked until you kill enemies, but those were more frustrating because firstly, these guys fly off with keys in a cutscene, so I thought they'd be scattered around Volataris, but nope, they're just like 5 feet away from the spear. And secondly, for some reason, one of them always evades your attacks even though it's the exact same level and enemy, and the only way I found to do damage was to get out of my skell and use an aura or change my entire skell. And then the other one is a big boy who is largely fine aside from their one move that causes you to fall to the ground, which aggroes most of the enemies, so you're basically chalked at that point. I would love if they had an event theater to rewatch cutscenes so I wouldn't have to replay that whole section for story stuff. Maybe in a future update, but I doubt it. Xenoblade X is a very different entry from the rest, but a welcome addition nonetheless. I think this further cements that Xenoblade is just my comfort franchise. I can go back to any of the games whenever, and it kind of feels like a second home. And while Xenoblade X lacks a story I fell in love with, it does have a message I like, which is humans being able to persevere even in the most threatening situations. And if nothing else, Xenoblade X has immaculate vibes, and if I ever just want to boot up a game and relax, this will definitely be one of my top picks. Oh yeah, the new epilogue stuff is pretty decent. I love the new characters, and the story leaves things open to a potential sequel if they ever want to make one, but it's also a pretty nice bow on top of everything, so it doesn't really need one. It's kinda surreal that there's only one game in the series left for me to cover, and it just so happens to be my favorite. At least, it was, but I have yet to replay it since it came out, so maybe my thoughts have changed. I'm also excited to play through the DLC for the first time because I've seen literally nothing aside from trailers. It'll probably be a while before that video, so subscribe to be notified when it comes out within at least the next 10 years. With that, I'll see you all next month with a new video. Bye bye!